So today, I talked to a friend that he's a born-again Christian. I know that comes up in some of these real talks, and the reason for that is I know a lot of born-again Christians. I was a born-again, King James-only, fundamentalist street preacher for years, so I know a lot of Christians. So, I also know a lot of Christians who will never ever talk to me again because I am no longer a street preaching fundamentalist Christian. But that's the ball's in their court. That's the way that goes. But I was talking to my friend today, and he asked me, he's somebody that we've been close for a long time, and he asked me like he usually does at least once a month, like, hey, when are you coming back to church? And I told him, like I do once a month, probably not in either one of our lifetimes. And he doesn't get on me about it. He's kind of just does it playfully now, and I get it. I get what he's trying to do, and I understand. But I've had to kind of re-explain every time to him, and my explanation is this, that my thing was, when I came to my enlightenment as far as what the church started to mean to me and what Christianity on a whole started to mean to me, was that I wasn't being told the truth. And some people, like my friend, are willing to go there every week, a couple times a week, and I'm not saying they're being lied to, but they're not being given the whole truth. They're being told, hey, this is what God says, and this is what you should do. And instead of them going home and either reading those verses or reading between the lines of those verses or putting any kind of critical thinking whatsoever into those verses, they just say, okay, well, my pastor said it, and it must be right. That's not a good way to do it, because you're allowing another man's truth to be your own, and you're taking another man's opinion as your own opinion. And there's nothing wrong with taking something that resonates, because obviously people go to this channel to take things that resonate. But I also tell people all the time, don't take my opinion as your own. Don't take what I'm saying to you as truth. Look for it yourself. But unfortunately, a lot of my brothers and sisters, my friends that are in religion still, they don't do that. They're not willing to do that. And I don't push it upon them, because it's not my place to push it upon them. Just like it's not their place to push their religion on other people. That's a different story. I've told him that, my thing is that I started looking at things. I started realizing that the God that Jesus, listen, right off the bat, Jesus Christ, I won't say that, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Jesus, not Jesus the Christ or Jesus Christ, but just Jesus, the man known as Jesus, was a New Ager. He was a New Age spiritual leader. It is so simple to see that once you open your eyes and look into what he was talking about. And unfortunately, you say this to anybody in a Christian church or a Catholic church, and they're going to call you a heretic or crazy or of the devil. But it's right there for them to see. They're just not willing to see it because they've been told not to look for it. When Jesus came out and talked his message, he was totally against what the church was saying at the time. I'm sorry, the temples, which were the Hebrew equation of what the churches are now. He was against the temple preaching and the temple teachings, and he spoke out against the message of ritualistic sacrifices and the tithing and such as that. He was somebody that was telling everybody to look within. He was teaching love. He was teaching forgiveness. He was teaching mercy. He was teaching care. He was teaching empathy. Now, it's not that the original Hebrew church didn't have that, but they more or less did everything through law. It was all through law. It wasn't so much like people didn't go out and give money and help the poor because they wanted to, because they felt it in their heart. They did it because it was the law to do it. Whereas Jesus said, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing when you're helping the poor. Don't go out there and look for praise and upvotes and likes on your Facebook video of you helping people on the street. Don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. Whereas the Pharisees and them, when they would give to the poor, they would go out there and they'd ring the bell and they'd bring a bunch of attention to themselves. That wasn't his message. He was telling you to keep it from within. Keep it inside, and God will see that, And so his message wasn't their message. It wasn't a Hebrew message. He was Jewish. He was definitely Jew. Jesus was a Jew. He was not, by nationality, he was Jewish. He was not, white, blue eyes, and blonde hair. I'm sorry. I don't understand how anybody can see that. But anyways, he wasn't preaching that message. He was preaching something different. He was preaching what you hear in a lot of New Age stuff is what he was preaching. It's clearly written there in those words and in words that aren't allowed in those books, such as the Gospel of Thomas, which is eye-opening. But when, so my friends say, well, but that's Jewish religion. We're not Jews. And but the problem is that early Christianity ran with what Jesus was saying. They took what he was saying and they did it what he was saying. They looked within. They understood like God is within us and we are within it. And they ran with that. But then Paul came along. And I'm not criticizing Brother Paul so much as doing this in a weird kind of, maybe he's a spy kind of way. I'm doing it as in he came in, and the problem with Brother Paul is Brother Paul was at one time a Pharisee. He was a temple Jew. He was by the law. And yes, I know many Christians will say, well, he changed all that, blah, blah, but he didn't. Because you can clearly see in his writings that, yes, he talks about Jesus, but he doesn't talk about Jesus the way Jesus talked about Jesus, or about the way that Jesus was trying to teach others to do things. He talks about Jesus in a ritualistic, temple, sacrificial way. He says, oh, he's the Lamb of God. He's this, he's that. Paul never mentions anything that Jesus says. But what I'm getting at is, and like I said, Paul is not the bad guy. Paul may have had a change of faith. He may have had that moment in Damascus. But the problem was Paul brought in the church. He brought in the temple. And therefore, the God that Christians are now praising and worshiping and loving, the God that they think is Jesus' God, it's not Jesus' God. It's not the same source that God was, or that Jesus was talking about. It's clear as day. You could type this in the AI and it would tell you the same thing. They're separate. You basically you had a man who went from the Hebrew God who taught the law and punishment and fear and war and all that, to a man walking around going, hey, love your enemy. If he slaps you, turn the other cheek. Let him slap you again. If he asks you to walk a mile, walk 2 miles with him. Pray for him. Love him. Forgive him. Show him compassion. Show him empathy. The complete opposite of what his other brothers were saying at the time. And then he had followers. And those followers, they started doing things. And they started doing it just like that. The Essenes. Everybody knows the Essenes if they've studied anything on this. Okay? They took it and they ran with it. But then Paul started writing his stuff. And then the church started growing. And then you go 100 years later, and another 100 years later, and another 100 years later, the Romans come into it. And the Roman alignment. That's what they call when they brought in the church and the state together, was the Roman alignment. And when they did that, everything changed. The churches that you have now, whether Catholic or Protestant, are the same thing as temple. They're based on laws. The Catholic Church had their laws. They put in tithing. They put in baptism. They put in all that stuff. The Protestants have done the same thing. They say that they don't do the same thing, but they do the same exact thing. They cherry pick everything and make it work accordingly. Tithing? I mean, come on. Tithing? If you're going to cherry pick the Old Testament, you conveniently cherry pick tithing. But anyways, it's not the same. And I tried explaining this to my brother once again. Probably not in the same words. It's probably why he doesn't get me. Or maybe he's starting to get me. Maybe he's looking and I don't even know. And that is something that happens in Christianity, that if you start going outside of church and outside of the book itself and start looking and using your own mind, you don't tell anybody. It's pretty sad actually, but it's very secretive. You don't tell anybody. There are churches that I have belonged to that if somebody finds out you're doing that, they will rat you out and they will call you out in front of 300-500 people in church on it. And that ruins people. That can ruin people. I know one brother that in church got called up for something. Well, he read the Gnostic texts and they called him out in front of all the church one Sunday. And this brother had a local business, and his local business, his sales went down because he continued to look into other stuff. But then he got scared and he went back to church and they forgave him and they made him do a big, sorry in front of everybody. They made him say sorry to the church, not to God. And that happens a lot in a lot of different denominations. They will never admit to it, but it does. I won't get into the whole jabs at that faith right now. Someday I'll make a video on that, but it'll sound very egotistical, so I don't want to go there. What I was getting at, though, is the Jesus that they're celebrating now is not the Jesus that walked around Galilee. It's not. Jesus was a New Age movement. Christianity, on a whole, is a New Age movement. Whenever, I actually thought it was very funny that when the YHS, the original YHS, chose a Christian path and changed his channel over that, he said that New Age is wrong, and he put it all over his channel and put it all over his new videos, that New Age is wrong, it's the devil's work, and blah, blah. And it's like, brother, can you not see that Christianity is New Age? I mean, literally, it's only 2,000 years old. Even if you don't want to go back that far, it's definitely New Age when you think of all the other religions that pre-existed before it that is literally in the Bible, and they tell you about those other religions. Therefore, by definition, Christianity is New Age. And Jesus was preaching New Age, and the first early parts of the church believed what he was saying and practiced New Age, spiritualism, awakening, going within, realizing that we are all divine. It did all that. But then they realized that they were losing control. See, they went from control of the temple church to no control because you had a couple of thousand Jesus-loving people walking around. They weren't rebelling or anything, but the Romans don't want that. Anybody in power doesn't want that. They don't want an independent movement running around because that may lead to trouble. It may not. They probably wouldn't have done anything, but it didn't make a difference. They had to get rid of it. There's only one way to get rid of it. Start killing them, which they did. And then when that wasn't really working according to plan, they said, well, let's bring them in. Let's allow them to be a part of the state. And that's what they did, the Roman alignment. Christianity is a New Age religion. No matter which way you look at it, no matter how much you want to deny it, I will argue that with you in the comments all day long. It is a New Age religion. Let me rephrase that. It started off as a New Age religion. As far as what it is now and what it has been since 325, it's a temple church. It's a temple church system. It's the same exact system that was being used before Jesus started walking around. The God of Jesus is not the God of Hebrew tradition, but the God that Christianity is now preaching is not the God of Jesus. The God of Christianity now is the God of the Hebrews. All you have to do is read between the lines and you can see where the line was going straight and narrow, and then all of a sudden it took a dip, and that dip was Jesus and his message. And then all of a sudden you see the line go back up straight and narrow again. That's where the temple church became the Christian church. It's there. I'm going to end this. I only said it because it was in my heart to say it. I am told by plenty of friends and plenty of people that I do not consider friends, even though I still love them, but they do not love me anymore because I am not of their same creed. But I am told all the time that I am no longer a Christian and I was never a Christian. Well, I will tell you right now, by definition, being a Christian is somebody that follows or tries to follow the way of Jesus. And I do that. And I believe that he, just like many others, still deliver messages to my mind and heart so that I can deliver them to others. And that's what this was for. I love you all. Walk in light. Do not allow another man's truth to be your own.
Until next time, my friends, I ask all people everywhere to plant seeds of love, peace, joy, and oneness.